Hey, so today I want to talk about and this idea of generosity and and what that has to do with fearless intimacy, or this idea of fearless intimacy. And this idea of generosity is something that I've been working in my own life and contemplating in my own life for, I don't know, 15 years, at least consciously. I'll tell a story a little later about one type of generosity and when that first really sparked my interest in it. And it's something that I really bring into all the work that I teach, and something that one of my colleagues, John Wineland, and I have really been exploring and bringing into our work a lot over the last couple of years. And at the same time, I want to try something for this live video that I usually don't do, which is I'm going to see if I can kind of stay connected to who's here, like, hi Naomi, hi Alicia, some sense of, and I'm going to see if I can notice comments. I see other people do that, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not totally sure how. Sometimes I don't see the comments till later, or I can't both talk and look at that. I'm not sure, but I'm going to try to do that. So if I'm saying something and you have a response, or you have a question, go ahead and write something in the comments. Like I just saw Naomi write hi. Okay, good. So I can see them. So say something, and I'm going to see if I can also kind of weave that in as well. So first thing I'm going to say is that I really believe that I'm going to speak to like 4 general overarching kind of, like, I don't know, I want to call them like ways of being generous that have been up for me. So 4 distinct ways that I see and that I work with myself. And I'm sure that there's more. So I'm not saying this is it, but the first one that I want to speak to is actually this story about when this concept of generosity in a really, especially in the realm of intimacy and in a really conscious way, entered my life. And it was probably 2003. So what is that, 13 years ago? It was around that time. And I went to see a teacher, and one of the things that there was a moment where he brought some people up on stage, and I don't want to go into the whole practice, but just to give you the flavor, he brought some people up on stage with them, and he sort of asked the audience to, like, not rate them in a critical way, but it was like to give them feedback on how, I can't remember if it was about how much they trusted them or how deeply they felt them, but it had to do with connection and just getting feedback, like, hey, I think I'm back, in that way where we do impact each other, and wanting to get feedback. And one man on the stage got some feedback in a certain way, and then this teacher leaned over and whispered something in his ear, like to give him some guidance around something he could do to maybe increase how deeply people could feel him, or how deeply they could trust him in that moment. And this is the moment that really stands out to me. So the teacher leans in and whispers something in this man's ear, and you can see the man hears it, and there's kind of the way it comes through and processes, and then there's this response, which I see in a lot of people in a lot of the work I do, where he goes, yeah, but that just doesn't feel like me. It doesn't feel authentic. And the teacher kind of took this, he took it and basically came back out and said, if you knew it would open the hearts of the people around you, would you do it anyway? And something about that really stuck for me personally. And I want to underscore that, like, being generous is inherently actually bringing something that you're not bound to do. You have no obligation. So I'm not saying that anybody has an obligation if you think you can open the hearts of people around you to do it. But there was something in that. It was like, that doesn't feel like me. If I knew it would open the hearts of the people around me, would I do it anyway? And so that's the first piece of generosity that I just want to bring into the space, is that inquiry of, there's all the ways that I normally act, look, dress, be, say, laugh, there's the ways that I bring myself. And then there's other opportunities. And this question around, even if it's not what's typical or feels like authentic, if I have the capacity to open the hearts of the people around me by, maybe it's opening myself in some way that's not comfortable or not common for me, or even dressing in a certain way, or speaking up if I tend to be more soft-spoken, or being more soft-spoken if I tend to be more pushy, or who knows, right? These are just examples. And exactly, Naomi, like opportunity, not obligation, that we're not bound, and that's just inherent in generosity. So for me, I really took that on, and it's been this inquiry. Not to say that I do it 100% of the time, or that I even know what it is 100% of the time, but it's an inquiry that lives in me. It's like a living question around generosity and my willingness to be generous, even when it doesn't feel like me, or it's uncomfortable. The second one is a little bit of a more like common piece. Hi, that I hear people say a lot. I don't necessarily hear people talk about it like generosity, but I hear people talk about it in the realm of relationship and intimacy, which is to give love in the way you want to receive love. Like if you're really desiring something, that you can offer it. And I see that as a kind of generosity in relationship in general, and certainly in intimate relationship. That what do we used to say? Decker used to say something at AMP, like a relationship is a terrible thing to get something. And really this idea of like, oh, we're bringing something. And so if I really want attention or praise, I can bring that and create it. And I've definitely had experiences of that in my life, and even that specific example. I remember last year, I had a newish lover, and I was like, so much wanted his attention. And I even just like in that moment, I was kind of like craving, I really wanted like praise. I wanted to know that he was thinking of me, or his attention was on me, or like that. And I just like, I kind of had this thought about this kind of generosity, but it was also before I let myself think about it too much. I just went straight to my phone and I wrote him a list. It was like, I don't know if it was 5 or 10, but it was like a list of things that I appreciated, that I could praise in him. It was like, what I love about you is this, and something I appreciate about you is this, and I love it when you do this, and you're really good at this. Like I just gave it. And I felt immediately better. It was kind of amazing. It was like before anything else happened, before I received anything in response, I just felt better. Like I felt freer, I felt more full, I felt less like cravey in that graspy way. And then, it was nice that, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes later or something, I got this, incredible response back that was not only how it impacted him, but was then also him offering that kind of praise and generosity that I was so wanting. So it doesn't always happen that way, that you get it back, but I think there is something to that kind of generosity of not waiting to get what it is we want, but to give it and to be full of it before we, without waiting for somebody else to give it to us. Yes, I love that, Naomi. Miracles occur in the space of acknowledgement and appreciation. And I would say that's just a huge, I mean, that's a whole other topic maybe I'll do, but I just think like acknowledgements, appreciation, and praise, like we literally cannot give that enough. So, but this actually brings me to the third one, which is, and this one was really brought home to me by my son, Trent. So the third one is offering love. That one was like offering what it is we want to receive. It's kind of like, I want to be loved like this, I'll give it. And this is, can we love them the way that they want to be loved? Can we love a person the way that they want to be loved, even if it's different, totally different than the way we want to be loved? And what happened with Trent was, again, I don't want to go into the whole story, but he was having some conflict with this neighborhood kid, and she would ignore him, basically, and it drove him bonkers. Like, he would have preferred if she said, like, no, and pushed him away, but he'd go out and say, hi, so-and-so, hi, like, he would try to talk to her, and she would just ignore him, and it, like, drove him totally to frustration, and he would, you know, and then he would get mean, he would yell things like, you're stupid, and then I had to deal with that behavior. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation also, but there was one time where I brought him inside after this happened, and I was just empathizing with him, which was kind of giving him love in the way I want to be loved, and especially as a child. Like, I just wanted someone to see what was happening for me. So I was saying, like, wow, that's really frustrating. I can understand why that would hurt your feelings. You really want her to respond. You know, it's kind of like in that sense. And then, and what did he say? He said something like, yeah, and I want you to tell her that she's dumb, or that I don't know, it was something. And of course I wasn't going to do that. But what I got was, he actually wanted me also to be active. And, so now I can't quite remember exactly, but it was like I realized, I said, oh, do you want me to say something the next time that happens? And he was like, yeah. And I realized too, I was like, oh, I could actually say something to this girl's mom. Like, I'd been dealing with it all in the sphere of my family, which is what I wanted. Like, when I was a kid and kids were mean to me, my mom I remember so vividly, these girls were being mean to me, and she was like, I'll put worms in their lunchbox. And I was mortified. And we weren't even around anybody. Like, she hadn't done anything. But I was like, don't ever speak about this again. Like, that was how I just wanted, I didn't want any attention drawn to me. I wanted to be cared for, but I didn't want anything like that. But Trent was actually wanting me to advocate for him explicitly, not just between he and I or in our family. And it was like, I was like, oh God, this is like the last thing I ever want to do, is draw attention to a conflict, or like speak out, or have to, like, it feels like now I'm in conflict with the mom, like I have to say something about what's happening. I mean, it just felt so deeply, deeply uncomfortable. But I thought, that's how Trent wants to be loved. It's not how I wanted to be loved as a child. It's not how I want to be loved now. But can I love him in the way that he wants to be loved? Can I listen to him deeply enough to actually hear that he's wanting something that doesn't make any sense to me, and also is like so uncomfortable to me? And so, I mean, in relationships that aren't parent and child, you know, it'd be very different. But like, you know, this is actually, so this one's for me too. So it's different because, like, I get that, you know, everybody probably at some level wants to be loved through physical touch. But it is not one of my primary love languages. Like, I like to be touched. I like to be massaged. I like to cuddle. I like to have sex. But I'm very particular, and it's not like even hugs. I'm not just one of those people who just like wants to like hug everybody, and that's how we like, it's just like I feel a little particular about that. And so I forget that some of my friends, a way that I can show them love is like I can just reach out and like squeeze their shoulder. I can put my hand on their leg. And sorry, hi Charith. Oh, nice to see you. And so it's this remembering and actually looking at that person instead of looking at myself to imagine how would I give love, but going like, gosh, how would they feel loved? Even if it's a different way than I want to be loved or than I'm naturally inclined to give it. And to me, that's like this huge act of generosity, is to say like, wow, you would feel loved. Or like my partner now, it doesn't come naturally to him to offer words of praise. That it's very uncomfortable for him, but when he hears that I want it, he offers it. And sometimes it's a little bit clunky, but it's partly the words of praise, actually, I receive them as love, but I also can tell that he's trying to love me the way that I want to be loved, even though it's not his natural inclination. And that act of generosity, like that goes a long way for me. Anyway. So, the fourth one I would say is the one where we get like, it's the most potentially abstract and trickiest. And I almost hesitated to bring it here because those other ones there's this beautiful like concreteness in offering generosity and love. But, hi Ken, thank you. I'm so glad it resonates for you. The other one is the place where we can offer something to the people we love that they might not even know that they need. And I think certainly in our intimate relationships, in which I include our very, very long-standing intimate friendships, people that we've known for a very long time or that we have an incredible depth of friendship with. Sometimes that's long time in history, and sometimes that's just like where we've gone with these people has been so deep that they might be shorter term friends, but we see them. And we have this, it's actually generous to offer to somebody what they might not even know that they need yet. And so I want to paint the picture all the way from the very like simple. I was working with a client today and I gave the example. She was talking about a way that she could offer something to her husband when he comes home and he's very tired. And I was saying, wow, like what a gift it would be. You can see that. He might dive right into something else or even, into relating with you, or there's all these other things, but you might see him and you might say like, hey baby, how about you go lie down for 5 minutes? And then as that was going through my mind, I thought, oh, that might actually be anxiety provoking because he knows how much else he needs to do, right? So just like you need to go lie down for 5 minutes is only part of the equation. But like, hey baby, I want you to go lie down for 5 minutes. I'm going to set a timer and I'll come get you when 5 minutes is done. That's like, wow. You can see that I'm exhausted. You can see what would actually support me in that moment. And you're going to hold the container of that for me. I don't have to do anything. That's generosity. That capacity. And to see like, wow, in this moment, maybe you need to lie down. In this moment, maybe you need to dance. In this moment, maybe, these places where we actually do see each other. Maybe you need to yell. Maybe you need to cry. Maybe you need to tell me everything you're mad at me about. Maybe, it's this place of generosity where we can actually see this is what would serve this person in this moment, and we can actually offer it to them as a gift of generosity in a way that they not only do they do they not have to ask for it first, but that they might not even have been able to see that they wanted that to begin with. And I imagine that most of you have had at least some moment of that in your life where somebody saw something and you were like, whoa, and it was like relief that that not only did you not have to ask for it, but that part of you that was like, wow, I didn't even know that I wanted it to ask for until you said it in that moment. So just to bring a little bit of, again, to me, I spoke to these 4 different aspects of generosity, but generosity as a whole, to me, is an absolutely key ingredient. It's like the flour in, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's like the eggs, because that's the part that holds it together if you're making a cake or baking something, but it's like essential, like very, maybe, I don't know, I'm like, there's some things that are made without eggs, but you can't do it without generosity. I want to say how important generosity is to your intimate relationships, absolutely to your romantic intimate relationships, but also to those relationships that you want to be intimate in some way, where you want a depth of love, whether they're your long-term friends, whether you want that with your family, whether there's a relationship that's not so long-term, but you want a depth of intimacy. Generosity is absolutely key. Like, I actually believe that you can't do it without generosity. You could have all these ingredients about how to give and receive love, and you could talk it all out and you could work it all out, but unless you're ultimately willing to bring yourself from a place of generosity to that relationship, there's a cap on where that relationship can go. It simply cannot grow beyond a certain point unless you find ways to bring yourself generously. And yeah, for those of you who are watching the replay, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, especially like any of those areas of generosity that speak to you most strongly. Some of them that, maybe some of them you might have heard of and might be more obvious to you, and others might sort of have been a surprise. And I think a really important one for all of us is to look at that one that is the least obvious, or that we're least likely to remember as a way of being generous, and see if we can, it's both on that side, and see if we can cultivate it, and then look at the one that's our strongest and really also play to our strengths. I think both, it's not about not doing the one that we're strong. It's like, wow, I'm really good. Like, what am I really good at? I think I'm probably best at offering what I want to receive. Like, I have the most practice. It's the most obvious to me. In my work, I bring a lot of like, give what they might need that they might not already know, is like being able to see somebody and I've set a context in which that's desired, and I can say, hey, do you want this? So I can bring it to you. But yeah, for any of you, is really going like, wow, where can I improve? And where am I already really strong? And that there's something in, we might want to wait until we're fearless, right? Like, oh, I'm afraid to be generous. I'm afraid to be generous. What if they reject it or something? Wait until we're fearless. And often it's actually the fearlessness that comes through the giving. That in the very act of generosity and loving in these ways, we actually become more fearless. So my wish for you is more offering of generosity in the service of fearless intimacy. And I love you. Ciao.